I have some fun DIYs using Dollar Tree beads I know you're going to love. For our first project, we're using one of Dollar Tree's 10-inch beaded wreath forms. Turn the hanger off to the side, and using some greenery pieces, these came from Hobby Lobby, I'm going to place one at the top and one at the bottom. I'm also using some greenery with white flowers. This also came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to bend them to form the shape of the wreath form. Place these directly on top of the greenery, and using some floral wire, I'm going to cut off a few pieces of that so I'll be able to attach this to the wreath form. I'm going to wrap that around the two greenery pieces and then twist it in the back. I'll do that at the bottom, top, and middle of each of those greenery pieces. And then I'm going to flip that over to the back side and make sure that it is really tight. And once I cut the excess floral wire off, I like to take a pair of pliers and twist it to make sure it is secure, and also to push it down in between the beads so it doesn't scratch anything. We'll do the exact same thing for the other greenery pieces at the top part of the wreath. Once those are secure in place, I like to go back, fluff them out, and kind of twist the flowers and the greenery and intertwine them together. Now I'm going to use some burlap wired ribbon with some buffalo check trim. This came from Walmart. And I'm going to cut down 4 pieces at 14.5 inches. And I'm also going to cut 4 pieces at half of that, so about 7.25 inches. Using the 14.5 inch pieces, take all 4 of those, line them up on one end, and then fold that in half. Cut that at an angle, and this will dovetail all 4 ends of that at one time. We're not going to dovetail the other pieces, just one end of those 14.5 inch pieces. You'll need a piece of twine. We're going to take those long 14.5 inch pieces and fold it over to create a loop. You want your loop on the ones with the tails to be about the same size as the smaller pieces, which we're just going to fold in half. I'm going to go ahead and fold each of these down to create the same size loop for the long ones with the tails. Then we'll pinch that together in the middle, and we're going to take one of the other pieces with the tail, pinch it together, and place them side by side. Then we'll take one of these smaller pieces where you just fold that in half, pinch it together, and put it on the outside of one of those with the tails. Do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So then you'll have the 2 in the center with tails, and the 2 on the outside are the short pieces without the tails. Then you'll take your longer piece with the tail. We're going to put that on the outside, right-hand side. Put another small piece, and you're holding it all together with one hand right where all the pieces gather together. We're going to turn that around and do the exact same thing on the opposite side with the tail and then the smaller one. Then take your piece of twine, or you could use a zip tie if you want to, and tie that in a double knot where all of those pieces are gathered together in the center. Make sure you tie it really tight so it does not come loose. Leave your twine on there because we're going to use that to attach to the wreath form. I'm going to pull the tails out so that I have one on each side, and then I'll go back and fluff out all of my bows and my loops and separate them and make sure they are nice and fluffy and pretty. Now we can take that excess twine, wrap it in the center where our greenery pieces are, flip that over and double or triple knot it. Just make sure it's really tight and secure to your wreath form. Then you can cut your excess twine off and go back and fluff out your bow again. I love this. You could have this at the top, at the bottom, or off to the side, just depending on how you want to hang this wreath up. For this project, we're using another 10-inch beaded wreath form from Dollar Tree. You don't necessarily have to have the wreath form. I just wanted some of the beads, so you could use some loose beads. I'm going to use 11 of those. Using some wood glue and a square, I'm going to apply some glue to the sides of the beads so that the holes are at the top and the bottom. And I'm going to glue all 11 of these together. And I'm just using that square to keep this in a straight line. Then you allow your glue to set up so that it is tacky enough that it will stay in a straight line. We're also going to use one of Dollar Tree's bamboo rings. We're going to use the larger one. It's the 7.8-inch one. And then once that's tacky enough, you can remove your square, add some wood glue to the outside beads. And then we're going to set that bamboo ring directly over it and then kind of slide our bamboo ring up so it touches the sides. Now it's not going to stay there, so I am going to use some burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree and hot glue this to the bamboo ring as well as the beads, tucking it in between each of the beads. This is going to secure them and keep them in a straight line. So you could skip the wood glue part, but I found that it was just easier to use the wood glue so that they'll stay in a straight line as you are attaching your ribbon to the front. So this is how it looks on the back side. I'm going to take another piece of that same ribbon and create a hanger at the top by folding that in half and then tucking the ends through the loop. And instead of tying a knot on the two ends, I'm just going to hot glue those together so it will have one continuous loop at the top. But you could use whatever kind of ribbon you like, so you can get really creative with this. I'm using some Dollar Tree flowers, and I'm going to hot glue that one in the center of the bead, and then I'm going to add some greenery on each side, and each piece I'm hot gluing in. These are just tiny little sprigs that I have cut off of bundles that I already have in my craft room, and I'm going to add some variation of greenery, some lavender, and some white flowers. I'm going to make sure to remove all of those glue strands, and you can leave it just like this so you can have the ribbon on the front or you can show the beads on the back. I went ahead and added that same ribbon to the back just in case I want to hang it up and it can kind of twirl around and you can see all sides. But also I preferred that look better. So you guys let me know what you think of this project. This next project is super easy but turns out quite beautiful. Take one of Dollar Tree's candle holders, remove that top piece, we don't need it, we only need the bottom piece, and I painted mine with a black acrylic paint. Then we're going to take some beads. These came off of a hanger off of previous projects where I've removed the hangers. So I'm just going to reuse those, make sure they're all the same size, and then take a piece of twine to wrap around the ledge on the candle holder to make sure you have a long enough piece. Tie a knot in the end so you'll be able to feed the beads onto the twine. Once you have enough on there to go all the way around the ledge of your candle holder, double knot the other end, cut the excess off, and we're going to glue this right on the ledge. I'm using some Gorilla hot glue, but you could use a more permanent glue. Do this in small sections so that you can keep your beads even all the way around. Once everything is glued down, I'm going to take a clean, dry paintbrush to remove any of the glue strands. And you can use it like this and set a pillar candle in there. But this glass candle holder from Dollar Tree also fits in this space. And you could put a smaller candle inside of that. Let me know what you guys think of this project. For our next project, we're using one of Dollar Tree's signs. We're going to remove that hanger. We're also using one of their 10-inch beaded wreath forms. This is a little too small to go on the outside, so you do need to unhook it where the two pieces connect. And I'm actually going to add another wood bead to it. You could just kind of separate those if you don't have an extra wood bead, but I wanted mine to be able to close perfectly together and to be able to tuck those metal pieces down into the other beads so that you wouldn't see them. So once I have those two beads glued on the end of the metal piece, we're going to glue this to the outside of the sign using some hot glue. We're going to do that in small sections, making sure we try to keep everything as even as possible. And like I said before, I took those two metal pieces and tucked each one into the other bead right there at the very top. Now you could add the hanger that came on it back on, but I thought it was just too many beads. So I'm going to take a piece of twine, just feed that through the holes and then double knot it in the back and cut that excess off. We're also going to be using a sign that I found at Dollar General, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I love the color of this, and it was only $1. Now we're going to remove that tassel at the top because it's not going to be able to sit flat on our sign the way that that tassel's in there, and I thought it was a little too long. Cut some of that down, feed the twine back through the hole, but glue it as flat as you can on the back. And then I'm going to double knot it on the other end to keep the beads from coming off, and you could put it off to one side or the other. I decided to go ahead and glue the beads down to one side so that they wouldn't move around. Cut that excess twine off, and now we can attach this using some hot glue right to the center of our beaded sign. For this project, we're using one of Dollar Tree's MDF butterfly-shaped signs. Oh my goodness, that's a lot to say. Say that 3 times fast. Remove all of the labels and tags and sand that down nice and smooth. Using a very small drill bit, we're going to drill through the center at the bottom of the butterfly as far as we can. Then we're going to flip that around and do the exact same thing at the center at the top. And don't worry if it kind of comes out the back side. You can sand that down with some sandpaper. You basically just want to be able to take a piece of very thin wire or use a piece of floral wire to be able to go through one end and come out the other end. So once you know you're able to do that, go ahead and remove the wire back from the butterfly because we're going to paint it. I chose to paint mine with one base coat of white paint, and I'm going to paint the front, the edges, as well as the back. So I want the entire thing to have a base coat because I am going to be covering it up. Once that paint dries, I'm going to take some Mod Podge and add a layer to the top, spreading it all the way out to the edges. Let that dry. Then we're going to flip it over and we're going to add a layer of Mod Podge to the back. Again, all the way to the edges, and you'll let that dry. I'm going to be covering this with a gorgeous napkin that I found at Hobby Lobby. I'm going to remove all of the back layer, so I'm only left with the top layer. Set this on a heating mat and use a piece of parchment paper and gently iron over it to get the creases out from where it was folded in the package. Then we're going to take our butterfly, now that the Mod Podge has completely dried, and we're going to cut the design that we want for the front of the butterfly out, just a little bit larger than the butterfly. Save your other piece because we're going to cover the back side of it with the other piece. So you'll set that down on your heating mat, put your butterfly down, add your napkin, a piece of parchment paper, and go over it with your iron. I like to do it from the center out all the way to the edge. And then if you need to, you can just trim some of that back with scissors, or you can just go over it with some sandpaper, and that's going to give you those nice clean edges. And I like to use my finger sander, but for some of those tough to reach areas, you can just fold a piece of sandpaper over in half. Once you have that cleaned up, we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. So this will now have this gorgeous design on both sides. I didn't have any more beaded wreath forms, so I am using this 12-inch MDF wreath base from Dollar Tree, but I think one of those beaded wreath forms would be pretty for this project as well. I am going to mark the center at the top and the bottom, and using that same size drill bit, drill a hole through the places that I marked. So you should have a hole at the bottom and then directly above that. I'm going to paint mine with one thin coat of white chalk paint, and I was not trying to get full coverage. I wanted mine to be a little bit distressed, so I did paint both sides, all the outside and the inside, and when it dried I went over it with some sandpaper to give it even more distressing. This is how it's looking, but you paint yours whatever color you like, or if you're using the beaded wreath form, you could leave it the natural color. This is how our butterfly is looking, so I do recommend you put a layer of Mod Podge on the outside of your butterfly to protect that napkin. Now we can feed that wire through, and you want to leave enough length at the top and the bottom. We're going to tie a knot at the very bottom of the butterfly to keep it from sliding down the wire. So once you have that in place, you can then take your wreath form. We're going to set the butterfly right in the center. We're going to feed that wire through the bottom and feed the other end through the top. That way, since we put that knot at the bottom of the butterfly, it won't slide down. So now we need to put a knot at the very bottom to keep the wire from moving on that end. And I didn't cut the excess off yet because I want to be able to stretch this wire out and make sure I have the butterfly centered. At the top, I'm going to create a loop and then twist that around till I twist the entire end of the floral wire. This is going to give us a hook at the top to be able to hang this up. So once I have that twisted all the way around, I can cut any kind of excess off and kind of squeeze that together with some pliers, and also make sure that I have a big enough knot at the bottom so it doesn't slide off. Now, I don't recommend putting this out in the elements, but if you did want to put this on your covered porch, you would definitely want to go over that with a clear protective spray. Because this is MDF, it will kind of warp and swell up if it gets wet. And this is how it turned out. So you guys let me know what you think of this project. I hope you enjoyed today's projects, and if you have a favorite, let me know in the comment section down below. I always love to know which one is your favorite. If you haven't subscribed already, I would love for you to click that subscribe button right below the video. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.